Suddenly not so casual. Friday evening in November. It is Friday, November 3rd, 2023. It is CFB College Knowledge for College, Week 10, The Shark and the Gun, live on Sharky Waters Nation X, Twitter. Come on over to YouTube. Let's talk sports, college football. A beautiful Friday night. Guns Picks. What's going on, brother?
Man, oh man, good start to the week. 3 plays, 3 bangers. We cashed them all. We swept the board yesterday. We gave you the Steelers. We gave you Troy. And we gave you Texas Tech on the full collaboration with the Shark and the Gun. And we are going to absolutely carry this over into Saturday. Got one pick for you on Friday as well. I'm ready to start week 10 college football. Let's do it, baby.
Friday night. Fridays are for freedom. 8 o'clock. Mountain West football. Colorado State at home hosting Wyoming. Regional rivalry. Huge game. November 3rd. The Gun, the first official of the Week 10 broadcast.
Yeah, as I'm seeing it right now, I guess this line is at 6 at this point. I did get it at 7. I think it's still good because I think Colorado State is the play regardless. But let's talk about these two teams right now. Wyoming coming off that, coming into this game losing back-to-back games on the road versus Air Force and Boise, which are, respectable losses in that regard. Two top teams in the Mountain West. They lost game 32-7 last week versus Boise, only putting up 112 yards of total offense, giving up 443 with a minus 331 net yard average. Absolutely got destroyed there by Boise on the blue turf. Then you got Colorado State coming off back-to-back losses as well to UNLV and Air Force. Two other respectable Mountain West teams. They lost to Air Force at home 30-13 in the snowy region in Colorado. Despite winning the net yardage battle in that game, plus 46. They got Wyoming is 5-0 straight up, 2-2-1 against the spread at home this season. They are 2-0 as a home dog, but when they're favored, different story. They're 0-2-1 at home as a favorite. It shows that their numbers. It shows in their numbers too. Out of 4 FBS opponents at home this season, 3 were decided by a touchdown or less. So they're not only not covering these spreads as a favorite, but they're also playing these games relatively close, regardless of whether the line is going to be sitting on this one. Now you got to look at Wyoming. They're 2-6-1 ATS as a home favorite dating back to 2021. Colorado 8-3 ATS as an away dog dating back to 2021. And then you got to look how these teams do during versus conference play. Colorado State minus 9 point differential, minus 93 net yard average, 0 turnover ratio. But they played some big teams with Utah State, Boise, Air Force, and UNLV. Wyoming on the other side, pretty much similar numbers there. Minus 5 point differential, minus 101 net yard average, but they have a plus 6 turnover ratio. That's probably why they're winning a lot of these games. But that was against Fresno, Air Force, Boise, and New Mexico. So you got to look at these matchups. 2 common opponents on this one. The statistical alignment tells you that Colorado plays better against Boise. They won the game 31-30 with plus 19 net yards. Wyoming versus Boise, you saw it last week. They lost 32-7 at home, on the road, minus 331 net yards. Same thing with Air Force. The numbers are telling you Colorado State. So I just think Colorado State is still fighting to get into a bowl game. They're still trying to get up into the, improvement as far as the program is concerned. This team was 3-9 last year. They have 3 wins already this season, and I think they're going to get another one here tonight. Give me Colorado State here, plus 7, 2.5 units special.
Love it. That game does kick off within the hour, so get on that. We see our guy Rocco Franchetti Jr. in the chat. If I didn't know you, I think you're a NASCAR IndyCar driver from the 90s. But staying course on a beautiful, beautiful Friday night into Saturday. Going back to the Gun. The Gun has a plethora of plays this week, and we love to see it. ACC football, Charlottesville, Virginia, UVA at home against Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech off a bye and a huge win, a win that seems to happen almost every year now against UNC. Nonetheless, a letdown and the first Saturday official from the Gun.
Man, this UVA team, I think they're drinking the Kool-Aid from the coach. I don't know what they're doing to that program, but man, this program has changed in the past 4 games than what we saw earlier in the season. This is a buy team now, and we need to buy on them now, and I'm buying them here at -2. You got to look where UVA is. They started the year 0-5 straight up. They had big losses versus Tennessee and Maryland. In their other 3 losses, they only lost by 3 points or less. So they were competing, but they just couldn't get those W's that they needed. But in their last 3 games, UVA has played exceptionally well. They go and they dominate William and Mary. FCS opponent, toss that one out the window. Then they go and beat UNC at home, a UNC team that I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, was undefeated going into that game, or maybe with 1 loss. I can't remember with the data on that one. Then they go against Miami. You think they were going to have a letdown spot? No. This team went to overtime with Miami on the road, by the way, and almost beat them. So this team competes with higher level tiered opponents on this one. Then you got to look with Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is a week-to-week team. I call them the coin toss. They're either going to play exceptionally well or they're going to play exceptionally bad. What I mean by that is look what happened last week. They go and they beat UNC outright, and they were a double-digit dog in that one. They're also 0-3 ATS this season after a win, so that is a big point on that one. Losing by an average of 17 points per game. So that's what I'm telling you about Georgia Tech. When they get a big win, they're highs of highs. They'll come out flat the next week. They're also 3-8 against the spread after a win dating back to 2021. So this is not only a small sample, this is a wide sample of what Georgia Tech does in these spots. Now, Georgia Tech in the last 4 games, minus 5-point differential, minus 69 net yard average, the minus 1 turnover ratio. Georgia Tech is coming off that big win versus a ranked opponent for the second time this season. The second time because they beat Miami as well. They beat UNC by 12 as home dogs. When they go into the next game, when they beat a big team, I told you they're a coin toss. So here's some samples of that. They go and they beat Miami 23-20. What do they do in the next game? They lose to BC. BC is a bad team. They lose 38-23. 2022, they beat UNC 21-17 on the road. And the next week, they get crushed by Georgia. Then in 2021, they do the same thing. They beat UNC 45-22 at home. Next week, they go against Pitt and get demolished 52-21. So you're seeing the history there with how this team performs after a big win. Last year, these two teams did meet, and UVA did win the game 16-9 as 3-point road dogs. Now the line is flipped to the other side, favoring UVA. UVA is also 4-1 ATS in the last 5 matchups. Home team is 7-1. It's straight up, and 5-3 ATS in the last 8 meetings. So that 7-1 straight up really keys in because the line is only sitting here at -2. I think this is a perfect spot to be jumping on UVA after Georgia Tech's big, massive win. This is going to be an UVA spot at home in Charlottesville. Should be rocking there. Let's go Cavaliers. This is not a 1 unit. This isn't a 2 unit. This is a 3 unit special with the horn, baby. So give me UVA -2, baby.
If the gun is backing UVA with a 3 unit play, you better take notice. You better take notice. My first play, 7:30 tomorrow night, about 24 hours from now. We're going with 2 units, 1 in the first half, 1 game. Kentucky Wildcats on the road in Starkville, Mississippi, against Mississippi State in SEC football. Let's talk about it. Kentucky started the season 5-0, and everybody thought Kentucky was running the best campaign of all time for them. Suddenly came to a screeching and abrupt halt. 0-3 last 3. However, situational analysis is very important. Those 3 losses at Georgia, 51-13. Friendly reminder, probably the best team in the sport. Come back after a physical bloodbath at Georgia and catch a very upstart Missouri team. Didn't have a lot of energy left. 38-21 loss. Last week, we backed them incorrectly. 33-27 loss to Tennessee. Very representative effort. Couple small window plays. They probably could have covered the game at 4.5. I have it written down here. Lost the flip, missed a field goal, 35-yarder in the 4th quarter. That was pretty much your spread. However, go back to the previous sample versus lesser competition. This team is 2-0 ATS in conference versus non-top teams. At Vanderbilt, their only road game in conference this year as a favorite, -12.5 cover. Key point in the first half, -7.5. Heavy split, 24-10 first half. Go to the other side of this game. Mississippi State is very, very polarized this year. Wins versus losses. Their 4 wins this year came against FCS Southeast Louisiana, Arizona, before Arizona shifted to the GOAT, Noah Fifita, and Western Michigan out of the MAC, and a really lackluster 7-3 win on the road at Arkansas. Key point, none of those were representative. Mississippi State is 0-2 at home as a home dog. They did get slaughtered against LSU at home, got slaughtered against Bama at home. Key point, both not LSU, Bama did hammer them last year and get them again this year. Kentucky got them last year, 27-17 at home. Mississippi State was a 6-point favorite on the road. They should come home up to 9 or 10. This goes the other direction. Kentucky -3. Steam is all over it as well. This is a double-digit victory for Kentucky tomorrow afternoon. Love it. First half, -2.5. End game, -4.5. Sunbelt football, Georgia State, 3:30 p.m. at home, continuing the upward movement campaign against James Madison. James Madison at -5.5 here. The Gun taking our boys at +5.5 at home.
Yeah, I got to be jumping back onto the Georgia State train here. It's the perfect spot to be fading our boys at JMU. But let's talk about these two teams for a second. Georgia State coming off a road loss versus Georgia Southern, which we had correctly as a collab play, 44-27, losing the net yardage battle by only a mere -5 net yards. JMU coming off a close victory as a double-digit favorite, 30-27 over ODU. They had +48 net yards for that game, but they had a -1 turnover ratio. They are 8-0 straight up, 5-3 ATS for the season. Georgia State will have to use the passing game to set up the run on this one, unfortunately, because JMU has the best run defense in the country. They held their opponents to 1.6 yards per carry on the ground and 49 rushing yards per game. But they do show some vulnerability in the passing game, where ODU did expose them. That's why they were pretty effective at keeping the game close in that spot. Now, Georgia State, mostly a run-first offense, but they can pass the ball. They're very sneaky good. Darren Granger is absolutely doing well in the passing game when he's allowed to. 69.5% pass completion rate this season, 8.7 yards per attempt. 10 touchdowns, 2 INTs. So I think he's going to really try to get a little bit more reps and more attempts and more throws in this game because he's going to have to with JMU in this spot. The Achilles heel for JMU's defense is their passing defense. They give up 289 yards per game in the passing game, 60.5% pass completion rate to their opponents. They give up a 7.3 yards per play in the passing game, which is ranked 64th in the country. So like I said, that's their Achilles heel. That's what you need to expose, and that's what you need to take advantage of here if you are Georgia State. You also look at JMU on the road. They only have a +5 point differential, +54 net yard average with a +1 turnover ratio. They beat UVA by 1, Troy by 2, Utah State by 7, and Marshall by 11. Marshall was a revenge spot, so take that with a grain of salt in that one. Georgia State at home, though, really exceptional. +6 point differential this season, +31 net yard average with a +3 turnover ratio. They did beat URI, which is FBS. They beat a UConn team by 21, which you're supposed to do. You're supposed to demolish them. And then they had a loss to Troy, and then they got beat they beat Marshall by 17. So I think this is going to be a highly motivational spot here for Georgia State at home. These two teams did meet last season at JMU, with JMU winning the game by the narrowest of margins, 42-40 is not where Georgia State was 9.5-point away dogs on that one. Now Georgia State is actually sitting here at 5.5 the next season. Georgia State did lead that game. If you actually look at the box score at halftime, 34-14, and they lost the game. So that tells you something there that they have the ability to handle this JMU squad. Also, you got to look at Georgia State. They had 2 defensive touchdowns in that game as well. Georgia State 5-2-1 ATS off a loss dating back to 2022. This is the circle game for Georgia State. They've been keeping receipts on a lot of these teams that beat them last year, and we continue to hit them in revenge spot after revenge spot after revenge spot. And what has Georgia State done? Cash tickets every single damn time. And we're going to do it. We're going to roll it here with probably the best team in that conference in JMU. Give me Georgia State here, +5.5, 2.5 unit special.
Love it. We love the Sun Belt. We love both those teams. We know both those teams Very, very well. My next play, staying with Kentucky team, seems to be a mild theme here to open this broadcast, week 10. Take a Western Kentucky on the road, first half at -5.5, 1 unit. Not super complicated on this. This is really just situational analysis. The opponent, UTEP, is 3-6 on the season straight up. Fraudulent 3-6. Wins against FCS Incarnate Word, FIU, and FBS newcomer Sam Houston State by 3 points. UTEP is one of the worst teams in FBS football this year. Not only that, UTEP home in conference as an underdog is 0-2 against the first half spread. They were an underdog to UNLV in week 4. They got absolutely hammered in the first half, 28-14 against La Tech. We know La Tech isn't even really that good this year. An underdog there, 17-7, first half La Tech. And you look at Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky is very, very polarized on the road, favorite versus dog. They are 0-2 first half on the road as a dog outside of conference. Week 3 at Ohio State. Let that be what it is. Ohio State far classier. And week 4 at Troy, another non-cover. 2-0 Western Kentucky first half road in conference at La Tech. An obliteration, 28-7 win first half. And at Jacksonville State, 17-10 in the first half. This is an all boxes check spot. That's why the number's on it. We love the split, -5.5 on an 8. It's telling you a very strong story here, and we're buying it for 1 unit official. Going back to the gun, 7 o'clock, Big 12 football. West Virginia back home in Morgantown. The Mountaineers at -5.5.
Yeah, I'm going to be jumping on Take Me Home Country Road to a place where I belong, West Virginia, because I think BYU is the most fraudulent trying to think of their record, 5-3 team in college football. And I'm going to tell you why in a second here. But BYU coming off a road loss versus Texas, 35-6, -62 net yards in that game, -1 turnover ratio, 3-5. ATS 5-3 straight up this season. Now you're going to look at West Virginia. They're coming off a road win versus UCF, 41-28, -13 net yards, +3 turnover ratio for that game. They're 5-3 straight up and ATS for the year. Like I said, BYU is 5-3 straight up. But when you look at the stats, it's crazy that they have this record standing right now. They have lost the net yardage battle in 5 out of their 8 games this season, only winning the yardage battle versus Sam Houston State, Southern Utah, FCS opponent, and Kansas. That's it. Those are the only teams that they've actually won the net yardage in. They have a -91 net yard average for the year, -141 net yard average versus conference opponents. So this team is supposed to not even win a game in the conference, but they're finding ways to do it somehow. Now you got BYU will have to pass the ball to win the game here or even keep it close. They averaged 2.9 yards per carry on the ground this season. Passing, unfortunately, they haven't done that well either. They only averaged 6 yards per attempt in passing. That's 115th in the country, with 201 yards per game passing, which is 94th in the country. Western Virginia's defense has its weaknesses, especially against the rush. They've been carved up pretty well running the ball, but they're playing a BYU team that can't run the ball anyway. So when you look at the pass game, it's a whole different story. They can defend the pass exceptionally well. They allow their opponents to 6.9 yards per play, which is ranked 41st in the country, 230 yards per game, which is ranked 59th in the country. So they're on the upper epsilon of a decent pass defense, and I think they'll get it done here with a weak BYU team. West Virginia's strength is running the ball. 4.5 yards per carry on the ground with over 200 yards rushing per game. And guess what BYU can't do? They can't stop the run. They get gashed against the run. They allow 5 yards per carry to conference opponents this season. Also got to look at West Virginia, 10-6 ATS at home since 2021. They're 3-1 ATS this season at home, while BYU is 5-9 ATS on the road since 2021. They're 1-3 ATS on the road this season. So I think this is a complete mismatch here. I think West Virginia is clearly the better team in this spot here. They're playing at home versus a BYU team that's coming off a beating on the road versus Texas, and now they're going to back it up to go back on the road to go play West Virginia. It's not a great spot for them. And quite frankly, I think this BYU team is fraudulent, and they're getting exposed here in conference play. Give me West Virginia here, minus 12.5, and that's a 2.5 unit special.
Yeah, speaking of mismatches in conference, my next play, we're taking Washington State. The boys, Wazoo, 9 o'clock, Pullman, Washington, minus 12.5. Steamed up now to minus 13 or 13.5 for good reason. Just like I was saying with Kentucky, and you guys see this week after week, I buy similar environments. Teams in conference coming off of bad clusters due to improve imminently in the following week. Wazoo started 4-0, and they are 0-4 since. But you say to yourself, why L4 last 4? At UCLA, tough spot, versus the GOAT, Noah Fafita at home, 44-6 loss.
I love it when you call him the GOAT. It's so funny. I love it. That's his nickname, man. The GOAT.
Kid comes out of high school. He's 5'9". He's just sweeping the Pac-12.
Let's go, baby. Hit the horn.
The following week, after getting hammered by the GOAT, 44-6 at Oregon. 24, Oregon, so classy. And at Arizona State last week, Arizona State owns them in Pac-12 play. So just the hardest 4 games on their calendar. Now they get to come back home, and now they get Stanford. And Stanford really is a bottom feeder this year in the Pac-12. Not only that, Stanford is showcasing very much a zigzag effect. Win, loss, win, loss, win, loss. ATS covers and non-covers. This is the 4th time this year they're coming off a cover the previous week. Let's go through it very briefly. Week 1 at Hawaii, win 37-24. Week 2 at USC, similar spot here. Road game in conference, 56-10 loss. Week 4, tight one against Arizona before they switched to Fafita, 21-20 cover, plus 13. Following week, Oregon, 42-6. A little later on, at Colorado, 46-43, triple overtime comeback win. The week after that, UCLA, we backed them. We started to pick up on this trend 3 weeks ago. UCLA, 42-7. Now, last week against Washington, a classy Washington team, Stanford played one of their best games the entire season. 42-33. The offense exploded, kept it inside of 10 points against a team in the conversation for the FBS playoffs. And now they got to go on the road to an angry Wazoo team, refreshed, a Wazoo team that hammered them on the road last year, 52-14, -4 road, -12.5 home. This speaks to a 17-point win on average. I think this could get bigger. This is where Wazoo will really let out their aggression. And again, Stanford with this incredible zigzag fade high off the previous week. Love this spot, 9 o'clock, 6 o'clock Pacific. Wazoo, -12.5, -13. Guns picks. Final play in the primetime window before a couple late night plays. Big 12 football, yet again. Iowa State at home. Rocco Becht and the boys facing off against Kansas. Kansas noted for not being particularly good on the road, and the Gun agrees with that and is backing the home team at -2.5.
I love taking unranked favorites versus ranked dogs. It is something that I'm addicted to, and quite frankly, it is a cash machine if you take them. Let's talk about these two teams, though, because I think Iowa State is in a perfect spot here. Coming off 3 straight wins, including a road win versus Baylor, 30-18, plus 94 net yards in that game. They're 5-3 straight up in ATS this season. Kansas is 6-2 straight up, 4-4 ATS this year, and they're coming off one of the biggest program wins in the history of Kansas Jayhawks football. They beat number 6 Oklahoma 38-33 at home with a mere +3 net yard average for the game, but it was a massive victory for that program and Lance Leopold. Now you got to look at Iowa State. They've done well at home this season. They're 3-1 straight up in ATS at home this season with a +8 point differential, -2 net yard average, but they are +8 in the turnover ratio. So they actually are fiends at getting the ball turned over from their opponents. Their home games this season, if you want to know what that is, we're talking Northern Iowa, Oklahoma State, and TCU. So that's where that sample size comes from. While Kansas has been a great home team on the road, not so much. They have a -8 point differential, -92 net yard average on the road this season with a -3 turnover ratio. These road games include Texas, Oklahoma State, and Nevada. So Texas, I'll give you, I'll give you a hand for that one. But Oklahoma State and Nevada, I mean, Iowa State had to play those similar teams too. But you got to look how these two teams do in conference, though. There's a decent sample here, and I think Iowa State has the advantage. Kansas plus 3-point differential, minus 70 net yard average. They give up 478 yards per game, 5.1 yards per carry on the ground, and 272 yards per game passing. Now you got Iowa State versus conference opponents, plus 4-point differential, plus 8 net yard average, plus 7 turnover ratio. So I thought that was a key stat. And they're giving up 370 yards per game of total offense, 4.1 yards per carry on the ground, 239 yards per game in the passing. These teams met last year. Kansas winning the game 14-11, one of the ugliest games in the history of football. 14 and I mean, how do you get 11 points on that one? I'm trying to figure that out myself. But they were 3.5-point dogs in that one. I'm talking about Iowa State. Now you got the line flip to the other direction in this one. Look at Kansas though, 5-10 ATS on the road dating back to 2021. Like I said, unranked favorites versus ranked dogs. You got to be taking the ranked favorite in this spot. Iowa State's playing at home where they play their best ball, and they're playing a Kansas team that doesn't play well on the road, and they're coming off the biggest win in the history of the program. They are very due for the flattest of flat spots. I think Iowa State demolishes the Jayhawks on Saturday at 7 o'clock in Ames, Iowa. Give me Iowa State minus 2.5. Not a 1, not a 2, a 3-unit special with the horn. That's how it's done.
Taking a breath. My last play. We're going late night. We're going 10 o'clock. We're going back to Arizona, and we're staying the course of action and buying Arizona. I'm waiting on a line here. We'll be posting this as we get a line. It seems like this is getting steamed to UCLA. A lot of juice coming in. I'm not entirely sure why. I think people don't really know how great the GOAT is just yet. But nonetheless, staying course with the conversation. We're going to be buying Arizona either at plus 2.5 or plus 3. Let's talk about UCLA. UCLA is 6-2. Fraudulent wins against Coastal Carolina, coming down precipitously off elite campaigns years past. San Diego State, pedestrian. Northern Colorado, FCS. Wazoo, in a really tough spot for Wazoo. Pac-12 bottom feeder, Stanford, and Pac-12 bottom feeder, Colorado. They do not have one representative win on their entire schedule. And now they have to go on the road where they are already 0-2 ATS in conference at quality opponents like Arizona with this current quarterback situation. At Utah, week 4, 14-7 loss, lifeless offense. A couple weeks ago in Corvallis, primetime, 36-24 loss. This is not where UCLA functions well at all. As I mentioned, freshman quarterback Noah Fifita showing incredible, sustainable quality, and the program is following his lead. This team has played 4 consecutive teams ranked in the top 20 in conference, and they're 4-0 ATS with 2 outright wins. This is not yesterday's Arizona. This is not a team and a program that pales in comparison to the basketball program right now. Those 4 covers. 31-24 against Washington. Washington is elite, a 1-possession loss. 3 overtime 2-point loss at USC, who was ranked number 9 at the time. Off of that loss, where people thought theoretically they'd down, absolutely not. Turned up 44-6. Wazoo in Pullman came off of that win. People thought they'd let down again. We had it last week because we picked up on this. They beat Oregon State outright 27-24. Now they get a very fraudulent 6-2 UCLA team. They get a team that they beat last year on the road 34-28 with the prior quarterback Delora. And the line is scaling heavily towards this direction. UCLA was minus 18 at home. Now they're minus 1.5. That is a 16.5-point gap. That speaks to a double-digit Arizona victory. Final point on this. UCLA is currently ranked number 19 in the country. When Arizona played Wazoo, they were ranked number 19 in the country, and they beat the 19 seed 44-6. This has blowout written all over it. UCLA is capped. Arizona is the definition of the beginning of the arc, uncapped. Buy it, live it, love it, dominate it, way down the line, 2.5, 3. Guns picks. I know you're going to buy that tomorrow night with me because it's such a goddamn beautiful play. And let's go to your final play. 10 p.m. Fresno State at home against Boise.
I got to stick. I'm probably going to ride with the GOAT yet. I haven't made it official yet, but man, I looked at that game hard, and yeah, you're right. It is a complete Arizona spot. I can't disagree with you there. But we're not talking about the Pac-12. We're talking about the greatest conference on the West Coast, and that is the Mountain West Conference, baby. We're talking Boise State and Fresno State. The upper epsilon of, we may see these two teams play one more time in the Mountain West Championship, but we shall see if there's other teams that may take them over here. We're talking Air Force, and I'm also looking at UNLV. But let's talk about where these two teams are coming from. Boise, 4-4 straight up, 3-3-2 ATS. This season, they're off a dominating home win versus Wyoming, 32-7, plus 331 net yards for that game. We talked about it when I talked about the Wyoming game. They absolutely crushed Wyoming on the blue turf. Now you got to look at Fresno, 7-1 straight up, 3-5 ATS this season, and off a big win. Where we were on, I was on the UNLV side, sweating that with the Shark the other night, and we got there 31-24, despite losing the net yardage battle with minus 112 net yards for that game. Now you got to look at Boise. They're a very good home team, but on the road, not so much. Minus 9 point differential, minus 38 net yard average, minus 2 turnover ratio this season on the road. Fresno State has been dominating teams at home this season with a plus 17 point differential, plus 90 net yard average and a plus 3 turnover ratio. What does Fresno want to do? They want to pass the ball, right? They have QB Mikey Keene, the transfer from UCF, I believe. 68.1 pass completion rate, 7.1 yards per attempt, 19 touchdowns, 6 INTs for the season. They average 296 yards per game passing. Now you got to look at Boise. They've been absolutely gashed in the passing game. That is their weak point on the defense. They give up 9 yards per play in the passing game to their opponents. That's ranked 127th in the country. They're on the bottom as far as pass defenses is concerned. And they also give up 296 yards passing to their opponents per game, and that's ranked 128th in the country. So if there's anything that could be the strength of the Fresno State offense, is the weakness of the Boise State defense. These two teams met not once but twice last season. Boise won the first matchup 40-20 at home in the first game as 10.5 point home faves. But Fresno, of course, was without QB Jake Haener. If you remember, he got hurt and couldn't play in a few games, and that was inside that window where he couldn't play, and they got demolished because they had no depth in the quarterback position. The second matchup, it was a total different story. Fresno did win as three-point road dogs, won the game 28-16 with Jake Haener back in the lineup, and they did it on the road on the blue turf. Now you've seen the line here sit with -3 with Fresno State the next season. Huge line shift. That's a 6-point line shift from game A to game B. Granted, Fresno State is home, but I think that's a telling story there, because Boise is 2-6-2 ATS on the road as a road team, 1-2-1 ATS as an away dog dating back to 2022. Even though they're a dog, they still can't get it done on the road. Boise has won 3 straight games prior to the Fresno State Conference Championship win. So, is there a little bit of revenge? Sure. But I think it's more of a continental shift of the control of the Mountain West. And I think Fresno is taking over in this spot, and they're going to win a couple of these matchups versus Boise. It's a perfect line. The line's telling the story. I think this is a perfect spot to be jumping on Fresno State. They played absolutely flat last week, and it could have been for the possibility that they knew what was coming up ahead in this week at home, second home game in a row on a back-to-back. Give me Fresno State here, -3, 2-unit special.
Love it, love it, love it. 36 minutes in the books. We appreciate you guys in the chat. Friday night, November 3rd, 2023, Week 10 Knowledge for College. 5 top plays from myself. Kentucky first half on the road, -2.5, and game -4.5 to get off an 0-3 Schneid versus the top quality of opponents they're going to face all year. It's easier Saturday, Week 10. Western Kentucky on the road first half, where they function great in conference versus a very, very low-level UTEP squad. Wazoo at home, bounce back off an 0-4 sample against Stanford, -12.5, 13. And Arizona, the GOAT in action, 10 o'clock tomorrow night. The Gun 8 p.m. tonight, Colorado State at home, +6/+7 official. UVA at 2 p.m. ACC football, -2. Georgia State Sunbelt, +5.5 at versus JMU in a revenge game off a 42-40 high-scoring affair last year. West Virginia Big 12 home game -12.5. Another Big 12 home game -2.5. Iowa State and the late night special Mountain West Fresno State -3. That is 11 official plays on the broadcast. An opportunity to dominate. We appreciate you guys immensely. Sending you guys great vibes. Have a great Friday night. We'll be on here Sunday morning, 10:30 a.m. Shark and the Gun. The Odds Fellow may be with us, maybe not. I'm not entirely sure.
No, not this week. Not this week. Next week.
Not this week.
Yeah.
We will be live, fired up on Sunday morning. You guys know I love Sundays. I have bigger energy than any other show on the week on Sunday. Although I'm finding a big win right now. I'm feeling fucking hyped. So, Guns, appreciate you always. Hell of a show. Close them out with some words, and let's dominate.
Yeah, I just want to mention Eric P says, is the buy hat engaged for LSU? Well, guess what? You're going to have to wait and see because I'm going to be talking about the game tomorrow, Saturday mornings with Guns Picks, who's going to join me, Pimp Slap himself, and C-Mac, the most electric Saturday morning crew in college football, Saturday history. So please join us, 10 a.m. We go about an hour, and it's basically a chat-oriented group. You bring the plays, we bring the opinions, and we'll also be talking about the top 25 games. And also, of course, I will bring at least 3 more picks for you guys to feast on for your college football Saturday. And also, like the Shark said, join us Sunday for the Circa Million Show, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And we'll be giving out NFL plays. We've been just killing the NFL, and we're going to continue to kill even harder as the season goes along because we have the data now, and we only get stronger as the season goes along. But I want to appreciate the chat, everybody that's joined, Clint Farrar, Rocco, Gerard, C. Dot, the entire crew. Of course, the Candyman join the chat, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning to talk some more college football. Let's dominate the board. Let's cash some tickets. And as always, let's keep dancing. Bang! Yeah!